Hey guys, welcome to the Journey of Ruth Discipleship podcast, where we encourage listeners to love Jesus, study his word, and reach others. I'm your host, Courtney Lohman. Today, my guest is Laura Bruder. Laura works for Brave Love. They are a pro-adoption movement dedicated to changing the perception of adoption by acknowledging birth moms for their brave decision. Laura and I chat about the impact that creating an adoption plan can have for a mom experiencing an unplanned pregnancy. We discuss the emotions that birth moms go through before and after placing their child with an adoptive family, the benefits of considering an open adoption, the need that birth moms have for a community who really truly understands what they've experienced, and how adoptive families can honor the mother of their adopted child. This is a really important and necessary conversation. Whether you've adopted children, chosen adoption yourself, or maybe even know someone who made the brave choice to choose adoption, this conversation is for you. Before we move on, I have a great opportunity for you. This is your chance to be on the Journey of Ruth podcast. So every week I ask the same final question, and it goes like this. Because we're not meant to live life alone, who is it that has helped you along in your journey? I feel like this is an opportunity to recognize the people that have helped us get to where we are in our life. And maybe as you've listened to it week after week, you've thought, oh my gosh, I know exactly what I would say if I was asked that question. Or maybe you thought, I wish I had the opportunity to ask that, or to be asked that question, because my answer would really honor the people that have helped me get where I am in my life. Well, now it's your turn. I've set up a phone number for you to call and leave a 1-minute message with your answer to our final questions. All you have to do is call 602-935-0369, and there you can leave your name and answer the question. Yeah, I know 1 minute, it's really short, but I want to be able to share several of your answers here on the podcast, so we want to keep them short. Then on September 11th, on our 150th podcast episode, I am going to be playing several of your answers. Once again, that number is 602-935-0369. Call, leave a message, and tell me who has helped you along in your journey. Write it down or look in the show notes. Press pause right now and call 602-935-0369. Now on to our very special episode with Laura Bruder. Well, Laura Bruder, I am so excited to have you here on the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yes. I had a friend that suggested I contact you, and she's like, you've got to talk to somebody from Brave Love. And so can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Brave Love?
Yes. Well, I'm Laura. I'm a wife. I'm a mom of 2 little girls who are 4 and 2.
Wow.
And
lots of dress up in your house? Lots of princess and
Yes, and lots of messes right in front of me that you all can't see. So I live here in Dallas, Texas. I'm from Dallas originally. But I've been with Brave Love. I serve as the executive director, and I've been with Brave Love for 11 years, which is basically since its launch. So
okay.
I got connected with the founder and just really kind of fell in love with the mission. It was, which I can tell you about.
Yes, we are going to talk about that.
Yeah. So that's a little bit about me. You want to know about Brave Love?
Yes, please.
Okay. We are Brave Love. We are a nonprofit based here in Dallas, but we are a national organization, and our mission is all about changing the perception of adoption and by acknowledging birth moms for their brave decision. So right now, choosing adoption is just not the norm in our society. It might be more common, like for families who want to grow their family through adoption. But it's just not common for women facing unplanned pregnancies for them to place their child for adoption. And so, in fact, the latest stats are like less than 1% of women in unplanned pregnancies choose adoption.
Wow.
And so our hope at Brave Love is to make adoption just a more supported option to help change people's perceptions and attitudes, so that it becomes just a more, like I said, a more supported option, a more normalized option.
Yeah.
And so how we do that is through communication, education, and birth mom support. Those are kind of our three program areas. And so we share a lot of birth mom stories. We run campaigns. We create adoption resources for the people out there, the service providers who are in fact serving pregnant women. And so we also find creative ways to honor birth moms who have already placed a child for adoption. So I think Brave Love's a little bit, I know I'm biased, a little unique in that we're not an adoption agency. We're not a pregnancy center or a support group, but rather we're a pro-adoption movement focused on really removing the stigmas of adoption and showing that it's a brave choice. And so, I don't know about you, but like, and those listening, but I can see how adoption can feel complicated and overwhelming on kind of any side of the spectrum or any side of the triad. The process, even different types. You've got international and domestic infant adoption and foster care and kinship. There's just like all these different types of adoption. And so there's a lot kind of in the adoption like ecosystem, if you will. And so just to be clear, so people kind of know what we're talking about with Brave Love is we're kind of talking about domestic infant adoption. So adoption as an option for women in unplanned pregnancies. So, that's Brave Love in a nutshell, but I'm sure you have more questions.
Well, okay. So you say 1% of people choose adoption. And you said, okay, we want to take some of those stigmas away. What are the stigmas that exist that really act as like a barrier for women to choose adoption?
Right. I think there's the shame piece to it. There's the, will my child think that I've abandoned him or her?
Wow.
Will feel unwanted. There's this idea of others even thinking that I am like an unfit parent, and, we've surveyed over the years a number of different pregnancy resource centers all across the country. And, they often see firsthand and hear firsthand women saying, oh, I could never give up my baby for adoption. And the reasons are those that I just mentioned. Like, what will my child think of me? What will my friends, what will my family think of me? So again, it's this society and our culture doesn't necessarily see this as like a positive, loving option. The reality is, adoption is like tough. All of the options are, but there's a loss there that we can talk about in a bit if you want.
The interesting thing is that I've always talked about or like thought about the other side of adoption. I have a lot of friends and family that have adopted. And what I know is that the one person that is not judging, I guess, if you would think about it, the mother is that mom and dad that now have that baby in their hands. And I know story after story of couples that either they had more love to give. They have friends, kids of their own, and they had more love to give, and they were so excited to be able to offer that to the children that they adopted. Sometimes the story was that they themselves could not have children, and so they adopted. But the one story that I hear from them is, I'm so thankful that their mom chose life, because now I get to have this child to love. I get to be mom, and he gets to be dad to this child. Why like, are those messages getting back to the birth moms? Because that's what I hear on my side, is that not getting back to moms or out into the ether so that women know, like, adoption is not something to be, if you're in a situation where you don't feel like you can take care of this baby, adoption is not something to be afraid of or ashamed of, but actually it is the best choice you can make.
Sure. And no offense to Lifetime movies or other platforms out there, but they haven't always done a service to birth moms and portraying them in a positive light. Because that's it. Like, and that's so much of why Brave Love exists, to show that, like, birth mothers are mothers and they love their children and they made this decision out of love. And we just recently did some research with the National Council for Adoption, and there we did focus groups and a big survey of birth mothers and fathers. And I'm gonna butcher the quote, but it was something like, one birth mom shared in the focus group about, I know I made the best decision for my child and for myself, but I just don't feel like I have anyone in my corner.
Oh, yeah.
And so this idea of, like, being confident that, like, okay, I made this decision out of love. I wanted the best for my child, but, like, the rest of community or my, like, circle doesn't always see that. And so we're trying to change that, I'm trying to put those positive messages out there and show that adoption is a brave love. It's not perfect. It's not rainbows and unicorns. Like, and I think too, there's a lot with adoption, especially from that perspective of a birth mom, that, like, it's just hard to totally, like, imagine until you're in it.
Yes.
And so for us to be able to, like, put some color to this and show some stories and to help people understand the heart of a birth mom, develop some empathy and kind of see things from her point of view. So,
yeah. Can you share us for those birth moms? I mean, you just mentioned one, right? Which is that I chose adoption, but then I didn't have this community around. Like, you think about a young mom who does have a baby. You say, like, that hopefully, if they have a good community, they draw around her and they shower her with gifts and they call her, they make meals for her. Yeah. But what you're saying is that, like, for this adoptive mom, she's like, I had none of that support after I chose adoption. She'd given birth to a baby and she had made the best choice for that baby. She didn't have the support. So that's certainly a challenge for moms. Are there other, like, some unique challenges that moms face after they choose to place a baby for adoption?
Totally. So to be clear, I am not a birth mom. So for those listening, they're probably like, oh, what is your connection to adoption? So I'm not a birth mom. I'm not an adoptive mom. I'm not an adoptee. I just care about this mission and this cause. And that said, over the last 10 years, 11 years that I've been with Brave Love, it's been such a gift that I've gotten to know a lot of birth moms and get to hear their stories. And so that being said, like, full disclosure, like, I'm not a birth mom, so I can't speak from my personal experience. But being in the spot that I'm in with Brave Love, I have gotten to know a lot of birth moms over the years. And Ashley on our team is a birth mom. And so all that to say, there are, like, certainly unique challenges that birth moms face after placement, after they've placed their child for adoption. So I mentioned earlier, like, adoption starts with loss. It's complex, it's messy, but it can also be so beautiful. And so even just, like, imagining, like, she's gone through 9 months of pregnancy and then given birth and then walked out of a hospital perhaps and empty-handed.
That's right.
That's significant and something to be grieved. And she has made a really difficult decision, and one that will change her life and her child's life and forever.
Yeah.
I know a birth mom, Sarah, who once said, "I knew I was breaking my own heart to do what was best for him, for her son." And so there's this thing, I know, like you kind of have to sit with that.
Yeah.
There's this thing that I'm no therapist, but there is a term out there called disenfranchised grief. So that is a loss that's not openly acknowledged, socially mourned, or publicly supported. And so I think that's what a lot of birth moms experience. And so milestones can be hard, missing out on those big events, holidays like Mother's Day and birthdays, and that can feel isolating and hard. And even if there is like openness there, there's still that missing out piece. And so one thing that's a very normal question to ask, especially in small talk, especially in groups of moms and other women, is, okay, like, how many kids do you have?
Yeah.
And for a lot of birth moms, with that comes a little bit of a sting,
Yeah.
Like, okay, do I trust this person? Do I feel safe with this person? Do I disclose this with this person? That, like, well, I'm parenting 3, but I have 4. My oldest I placed,
Yeah.
So like, those are the things that they'll carry with them for the rest of their life, And even if they are like confident in the decision they made, people can still say hurtful, ignorant things sometimes, even if, of course, they don't mean to, So, I think in regards to, unique challenges after, like, unique challenges that birth moms face, you hear about open adoption, which has become much more of the norm. So open adoption, that can look like exchanging pictures and letters with the adopted family and your child, or that can look like having like direct contact and seeing each other frequently. It's kind of
open adoption is like the mom has an active part in the kid's life. Has a relationship. A closed adoption would be the child, you're not allowed to contact them until they turn 18. Is that correct? Until
right. Okay. And with like social media these days, I heard someone say the other day, like, basically all adoptions these days are open to some degree, but the beauty is now, like, a woman, she can choose, like, when she is pregnant and maybe she is seriously considering adoption, like, she gets to choose the family that she wants to place her child with. And she can choose, like, okay, I want a couple that's open to openness, or, you have semi-open, there are different terms to those. But again, even though most adoptions are open to some degree these days, it doesn't make it any easier, or, it's just you're navigating like a different set of like challenges perhaps. But there is like actual research out there that supports like the positive health benefits for open adoption.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask with your moms that you guys meet. Like, is it like, okay, yes, it's hard, but actually it has helped in my grieving process, or like, because they get to see that child doesn't have to like basically die in their mind for 18, years.
Right. Yeah. And to know, like, at the end of the day, whether adopted or not, we all want to know where we came from and our story, and so that's significant for an adoptee.
Oh, so it's healthier for the kid, not just the mom.
Right. Okay. It's healthy for all to know, and even from like, access to like health and medical information. like
Yeah.
that's significant to like have access to that. So,
Yeah.
but for a birth mom to know that that her child is safe and being loved and taken care of can be really healing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. And at the Journey of Ruth, we talk a lot about discipleship and mentorship. And,
Yeah,
I'm thinking about the grief process that these moms have to go through. And
sure.
obviously, if it's an open adoption, then there's, they get to maybe, walk through some of that
Yeah,
with the birth family. But I'm sure that's not really who you should like have as your person. Like, hey, family that adopted my child, will you be my mentors? Like
right, right.
you guys, I think, pair birth moms with other birth moms that have gone through this experience. Why is that so important to like bring them together? Is it a community
Sure.
thing? Is it a healing thing? What happens in those relationships?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
um, so just to clarify, um, we love to be able to connect
Yes.
moms. So we have special like birth mom dinners all across the country, and they happen
So cool.
around Mother's Day, and then in the fall, for like right around National Adoption Month, which is in
Okay.
November.
In November. Okay.
And so, yeah, and these are happening in cities like all across the country.
Awesome.
We've had them in Phoenix before, and we hope to be back there.
Yes.
And so we don't necessarily have like a mentor program at Brave Love, but rather we offer this way in which it's a connection point for birth moms to come together, sit at a table. And like, I mean, like this is what you guys are all about. Like we're not wired to do things alone.
Yeah.
We are built for community. And we have even found recently, like one of the main like factors towards healing for birth moms is being able like to connect, like for birth moms to be able to connect and meet another birth mom,
Yeah.
and that's significant. Like that's a shared experience. And kind of back to that idea of like this disenfranchised grief that, I mean, the reason we even started our dinners 11 years ago was we just kept hearing from birth moms that would share their stories with Brave Love, and just sort of this recurring theme of like just feeling so alone.
Yeah.
And I love like to bring people together and like connect people and love a good meal. And
Who doesn't love a good meal? That's right.
Right. And
hey, I'm Baptist, so a good conversation always comes along with a good meal.
Right. I'm with you. I'm with some fellowship.
That's right.
I hear you. So we started dinners in Dallas, and we had 4 birth moms show up, and I got to tag along because I was kind of helping host it, and it was 4 different birth moms, very different stories. But one birth mom there had just placed like within like the year. So the feelings and emotions were very fresh, very raw. And she was able to say like, I've never met another birth mom before. And that's significant, And so it's a big deal to be able to sit across the table from someone who gets it, and it makes you realize, okay, I'm not alone, and if anything, it can be so empowering. Like we, a few years ago, when we weren't able to host a bunch of dinners because of COVID, we had to get creative. And we're like, let's do some Zoom parties. And it was beautiful, even there, just seeing the screen full of faces of women all across the country. That, I mean, a number of them would then like, it was their first time to like do anything like that, to meet other birth moms. And then what's been really cool is, seeing how then they would like register again for another one and another one. And then once we started hosting kind of the dinners again in person, then, they were showing up and like sitting across the table. And so just giving space for birth moms to be seen, to be understood, and really, one of it, I know I keep mentioning this research, but it's top of mind for me.
Yeah.
Um, we had, um, we had a number of, we did a focus group, we did survey, and the response from like just putting it out there that like, hey, if you want to participate in the focus group, or hey, do you want to participate in this, was overwhelming. Like, I mean, we had a ton of birth parents respond and participate. And that in alone said, okay, like we need to give space to allow birth parents to share their stories.
Yeah.
And so the dinners, that's just one of the ways, that we do it at Brave Love. So yeah.
Okay, friends, are you signed up for the Inside Look yet? The Inside Look is our monthly newsletter where we let you know what's happening with the podcast. We start each month with a short devotional. Then we pack the rest with important information for you, the listener. When we need listener input for a future podcast, the questions and submission information are in the Inside Look. When we have an upcoming Patreon chat, information, it's in the Inside Look. So if you haven't signed up for the newsletter yet, make today the day. Head over to journeyofruth.com/newsletter and sign up so you don't miss any of the exciting things coming in the Journey of Ruth community. Okay, so we're talking about birth moms, but then your language just changed there to birth parents.
Yeah.
And so like, I know that if you watch the news, what you see is like my body, my choice.
Sure.
But there's a dad involved. And what shocked me when I was, it showed me like the world's expectation of a father. When I had my first child, everyone that I would meet, like in the, not people that knew us, but like a grocery store or like at the doctor's office, they would always like, oh, and is the father going to be involved? And I was like, yeah, because if he doesn't, I'm going to have something to say, but they didn't know me. They didn't know if I was married or not,
Right.
So what have you guys found about birth dads? I mean, I'm sure sometimes it's the mom just has to make that decision on her own. And sometimes there's a dad involved in that decision.
Totally. We have over the years been able to connect with a handful of birth fathers out there that have wanted to share their stories, and that's valid. And that's valid, and so I think that's what was really neat too, is as we did this survey, because we opened the survey up to both birth mothers and fathers.
Okay.
We had, I think, about 17% of birth fathers respond and complete the survey. And that seems statistically significant to me.
I would agree. Yes. I would agree.
And so just recognizing that they have a story too, and they have a voice too.
Yeah.
And I think also being sensitive to, I think it's something that we've actually like wrestled with a little bit, just in full transparency, with our birth mom dinners and planning them. We thought, okay, do we open them up to birth fathers too? And kind of where we've landed today has been like letting them be sort of that sacred, safe place for just birth mothers.
Yeah.
And even kind of surveyed birth moms to kind of get their input and feedback on that. And it can be tricky because obviously everybody's stories are different, but like for a lot of birth moms, they're not necessarily in a relationship with that birth father anymore. Or there could be a really negative experience, or potentially abuse or violence or whatnot. And so it's tricky and it's gray and all of that. But that being said, we love to be able to share birth father stories when we hear from birth fathers, and to be able to potentially connect other birth fathers to birth fathers, because again, like their experience, their voice is important too.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we did an episode on abortion, and
Mm-hmm.
the man that we spoke with, he's like, I'm a
Yeah,
man, and I have regret and guilt from
sure,
our choice, and
sure.
he's like, it was our choice.
Yeah,
And we both have, guilt from that. And his thing was, I have worked through some of that. And now I get
uh,
to, speak for others and say, can we make an adoption plan? Can we,
sure.
help with some of those things? Because I know what it feels like to be on the other side of,
Yeah.
choosing abortion over adoption. Um,
Uh-huh.
I want to know for you guys, for adoptive families, do adoptive families reach out to you guys? Do you guys have resources for adoptive families, or do you really just kind of deal with birth moms?
I love that you asked that. I think I mentioned this a little earlier about how, I think there's a lot, especially, sometimes adoption can be hard to imagine when maybe you're at that spot of like crisis, or,
Mm-hmm.
you're pregnant, unsure what to do, or maybe you're considering adoption, or maybe you're a prospective adoptive family. You're thinking
Mm-hmm.
about adoption, and so sometimes it's just hard to imagine what this is going to look like for you, your
Right.
family, and whatnot. And so for like how we help adoptive families, I think it really is helping humanize birth moms
Ah,
through
yeah.
education,
Okay.
and through adoption, like many times, like the focus is on the child, rightly
Mm.
so.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but like if open and willing, the the adoption triad, which is the child, the
Mm-hmm.
adoptee, birth parent, and adoptive parent,
Yes.
um, if open and willing, the triad can really be a place of honor and love. And so
Mm.
how we, help adoptive families is like, as we share birth mother stories, like we help do that, and to help make adoptive families kind of aware,
Yeah.
of like what that experience kind of looks like. And I think a big piece of it is just developing, you know, some empathy too. And so, our main kind of focus and lane really is birth moms,
Yeah.
but like for like adoption, it feels funny to say work well, but like to
Mm-hmm.
really like for people, for individuals to flourish, for families to flourish, like,
Mm-hmm.
and for it to be healthy. I mean, obviously there's no perfect adoption. There's no perfect, like
Yeah.
adoption comes out of like a broken world,
Yes.
like,
Right.
and,
Right.
um, life doesn't always go according to plan.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think, you know, how we can help adoptive families is again, just like helping like humanize birth moms,
Mm-hmm.
and help them recognize, um, you know, their child like is always going to carry a piece of their birth parents. And so you got
Mm-hmm.
to honor and love, whether there's openness or not. Like you can love your child by speaking respectfully about their birth parents and where
Yeah.
they came from. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I just so the earlier this year we had an episode on how to respect your parents.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
and and part of this comes out because my husband and I work with college students. And so we get
Cool.
lots of questions as they're going from adolescence into adulthood
Yeah.
about what does it look like to love your parents and obey your parents. Like, what does that mean? Honor your parents. You hear all these things. Like, what does that mean?
Right. You're
How
like,
do I do this
really
well?
though, practically. Yeah.
Right, practically, exactly. Okay, so you're like, we want you to like give honor to the birth mom. I can think
Yeah.
that there's probably some situations where it's really easy to do that. Like your mom,
Totally.
she just wasn't ready, or like she
Yeah.
wasn't able to take care of you, and she made the right choice, not to abort, but instead to make an adoption plan, and we get to have you in our home because of it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
not the beautiful story of all adoptions. Sometimes
Sure.
mom made really poor choices. Sometimes that choice is going to have like physical or mental effects for the child. It doesn't make the adoption any less valuable or them love their adopted child any less. In fact, sometimes I look at those parents and I'm like, you really love this child because you knew there could be, you know, I have lots of friends that have done this. And I'm like, that this baby had fetal alcohol syndrome. And what that means is that later on, you don't know what that could mean for your child. And you are going to choose to love this child. Where there are some families who would say, no, thank you. So how do you honor that, that mother, when maybe she made some choices that hurt that child that you love so much, and and as they're growing older and beginning to understand what their parents did, how do you speak about that and still show honor to that mom while being honest with your kids? Not like, well, I'm not going to tell you about that, which I know some people have chosen to do, but instead to be like, let me be honest with you, but how do you say that in a way that's loving? Honoring.
No, that's a great question. And it's the reality that a lot of people may be like navigating right now. And, you know, and that like, okay, maybe we can't see your birth mom right now because like their boundaries have to be set in place because maybe choices have been made and it's just not safe or in the best interest and whatnot. You know, I think even about, just recently, a friend was even sharing something just about how they talk about their like child's birth mom and they have a very open relationship and even just those little nods to like, you know, those little details of like who they are, you know, like, oh, I wonder where like my dimples come from. You know, like that's from your birth mom, or you know, like you're like just the pieces. I mean, nature, nurture, but like there's a lot there. But I think being able to not speak ill of her, you know, and I think going back to like, you know, we all have like sometimes make poor choices and there are consequences to that. But she like going back to like, she loved you so much. Like she knew what was best for you. And there are going to be like those hard conversations sometimes, you know, Absolutely. And I think that's where it's so paramount to that adoptive parents have like really great counsel, you know, in regard to like, maybe it's the agency that they've worked with, or, you know, or the attorney that they may work with. It's not just this transaction.
Correct.
You know, that like, okay, adoption's done and over. Like, no, like this is a lifelong journey, both for birth parents and adoptive parents, and of course the child. But I think being able to lean on those like experts and caseworkers and therapists out there as you like are navigating potentially some of those hard conversations about like identity and you know, and there may be some really sensitive stuff to why mom may have chosen adoption that the rest of the world doesn't need to know. And so like leaning on those experts for that like counsel, I think is really wise. But in regards to like, and I don't know if this is where you were going, like even serving birth moms and adoptive families, I think for like the best way like to serve birth moms really like is acknowledgement, you know, and it doesn't have to be big, you know, but like if you know a birth mom, like ask how their child's doing, the child that they placed, you know. Not all birth moms necessarily want to be treated as like superheroes, but they do love their children, and like that acknowledgement can
Mhm.
be like a really like dear, beautiful thing. And I think it's important for us to remember that birth mothers are mothers. Just it looks different, like just a different kind of mother, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think
and
sometimes when we have like someone in front of us that is a birth mom, I
yeah,
think back to our episode with my friend Becky Getz, who lost her son,
yeah,
and I mean he was a miracle baby every day that he lived,
sure.
and she said that one of the things that people often do is they feel like if they bring up Zach in
Yeah,
their conversation, that it will hurt her more. And so they just don't talk about him, or they don't talk to her about that, that time, or that,
yeah,
losing him, or how is
right.
she feeling now? And she's like, no, he's still one of my children. I still want to,
Yeah,
talk to him. He is a part of our family. He is a part of our story. He didn't just disappear.
right.
Every day he is with me. I carry him with me every single
Totally.
day. And so by you ignoring him or his story, or ignoring talking about him, you are
Yeah,
ignoring a part of who I am as Zach's mom.
totally.
And
Totally.
so I feel like that's the same thing, but with these moms, these adoptive moms, but then I feel like people are like, well, I don't even know what to say. Like, we mentioned before, like asking the question, like, well, how many kids do you have? And it's like, oh my
Right.
gosh, is that not a safe question to ask anyone anymore? Or even before we started, I said to you, what are the words that I use?
Right.
And you said, one of the verbiages that people use to say that we want to get rid of is like, well,
Yeah,
I put my kid up for adoption, or
right.
adopted them out. And
Gave
you said,
up.
no,
Hmm.
gave up my kid. Yes, yes, these
Hmm.
negative connotations. And instead, you're
Yeah,
like, what if we use the words, I placed them for adoption, or I
yeah,
made an adoption plan, as opposed
yeah.
to like some other thing. So if we're like, I'd love to talk about this, but I don't want to offend the person.
Sure.
How do we talk to them, love them, serve them, but also be sensitive to this really difficult decision they made?
Totally. Yeah, because you can't walk around on eggshells, you
Right.
know.
Especially if you don't
And
know, right? Like,
right, and you
yeah.
don't know what you don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think like if following their lead, asking
Mm,
questions, but giving them space to share what they feel comfortable sharing.
okay.
Obviously not passing judgment, but I do think language is a big part of it,
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I mean, how are you doing is like a
Mm,
very like, a very like human question, like to
yeah.
ask, like
Yeah.
what does your relationship look like, today? Like if you feel comfortable sharing, but no pressure,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
um, and because I think we all want to be that safe space in which
Right.
women would feel like they can disclose this
Absolutely.
part of their story,
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
I believe like birth moms are the ones that are really going to change culture's perception of adoption. I
Hmm.
I think they like I think of Lindsay, who is a birth mom that I've shared this before and I don't know if she's listening right now, but like I remember when she reached out to Brave Love and had found us and was excited about what we were doing and Lindsay you know we got on the phone, she shared her story with me and then she went on to like buy Brave Love t-shirts and for herself
Mm.
and some friends and they did a 5K
Oh,
and
cool.
like we're proudly like wearing and sporting the swag and then Lindsay ended up like hosting a birth mom dinner and then another one
Mm.
and then Lindsay went on to like become a director of like a pregnancy resource center and was able to be like advocate for adoption. I reached out to her not long ago be like, hey, would you help us out with this? And she was like, I would love to. I'm so busy. I've just joined this legislative committee for my state to help make adoption more of an option. I was like, yes, you go. But all
Awesome.
this to say, like, I think birth moms, and obviously that's not every
Yeah.
birth mom's story,
Right.
but like, if we at Brave Love can provide a platform and a space for them to share, feel safe, be seen and heard, you
Yeah.
know, like that's empowering, and
Yeah.
I think that's what we have seen even from these dinners.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're simple and it's not this huge event. It's like 6, 8, maybe 10 birth moms around a table. And that's healing to know that you're not alone. And, adoption has kind of come from a little bit of I'll say a bit of a darker past in that, there, and I think we still are like battling with a lot of like the shame surrounding unplanned pregnancies, and adoption and choosing adoption, all of that. But just being able to put this out in the light, and for someone to feel, and that's why even, closed adoptions and versus open, like, it's not like, it doesn't need to be this like hush hush thing we don't talk about, So back to kind of your question, like, and even the friend who lost her child, like, if we, if we're not like acknowledging her and even the decision she's made, then it's like the child doesn't exist, and then it kind of belittles
that sacrifice
her and that sacrifice, And so it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be big. But I think even just like, even the words that we say and the simple questions that we ask, and I think too, not to do like a Brave Love plug, but like
do really, it right now. Everybody open your ears. Let's hear this.
I like, there's something to be said about just like being a part of the conversation, educating yourself on birth moms, on adoption, and like just this point of view. Like, follow Brave Love on Instagram. We're on TikTok too. We're on Facebook as well, like at Join Brave Love. Or even just like go to our website, bravelove.org. Like, read some of the stories and familiarize yourself, because you never know. You just never know. Like, you never know. Like, we all are an influencer to a woman's decision. Right. You never know who you may encounter, or and just to know that like adoption isn't what it used to be. Like, it can be this really like loving thing. Again, so difficult, and there's a lot of loss and a lot of grief there. So I don't want to like say rainbows and unicorns. But if you know a birth mom, get to know her, really get to know her, and let her be in the driver's seat in terms of like sharing what she feels comfortable sharing, because she's got some life experience that not a lot of us have.
That's right.
And you'll learn something from her.
That's right. Yeah. So your social media is at Join Brave Love.
Yes.
And I have to say, definitely go follow them on Instagram. When my friend Amber Perona, who's also been on the Journey of Ruth, she said, you've got to go check out Brave Love. I would suggest you have them on the podcast. And so I immediately went and followed you on Instagram. And I agree. Like, you just learn. You guys do a great job, even on social media, of, educating, that communication piece. That's so important. And I think that's great. What's your website?
bravelove.org.
bravelove.org. And there's also wonderful stories that you can read there, and look at the different resources that they have available. I have one kind of hard question before we leave. And before we get to our final question that we ask all of our guests. Crisis, moms in crisis, unplanned pregnancies, they all lend themselves, unfortunately, to a very political discussion.
Yes.
Yeah. And one of the things that that you said to me, maybe it was you, maybe it was
maybe Ashley.
Ashley, yes. Yeah. That she said to me is, she said, we're not pro-choice and we're not pro-life. We are pro-adoption.
Mm-hmm.
So can you tell me what that looks like? Because I assume like you're probably asked to pull one direction or the other as
Sure.
an organization. What does that look like to like, because I feel like that's like everyone, like you're almost asked, like, are you pro-life or
Right.
are you pro-choice? And you have to
Right.
choose one or the other. It's like there's no in between. And you guys are saying we're not either. We are pro-adoption. What does that look like
Sure.
for you guys?
Yeah. No, I'm so glad you asked because I mean, it's just relevant. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I, um, I believe that anyone can advocate for adoption and birth moms, like
Mm-hmm.
no matter their faith, no matter
Mm-hmm.
their politics, ideology, skin color, age, you know?
Yeah.
And so we often say at Brave Love, if you say that you are pro-life, does that include adoption?
Mm.
And if you say you're pro-choice, does that include adoption?
Mm.
And so you can just ask yourself, are you advocating for this other option out there?
Mm.
What are your biases even towards adoption? Because I think we all probably have some.
Mm.
You know somebody who knows somebody, or maybe there was a bad experience, or or so do you like support adoption as a choice for women, and would you, encourage someone to consider it? And so that
Mm.
doesn't mean you have to know all the things about it. And it's not necessarily the right answer for everyone. And you and I aren't the ones to discern that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But education is empowering. And I believe like women really do deserve to know that like adoption is one of her options. So I
Mm.
know, yeah, it can sound a little like, you know, polarizing when it's like, we're not a pro-life ministry or we're not whatever. But it's about like anyone can advocate for this. Like we
Mm-hmm.
live obviously in a very polarized world. And like, I think this can be like a really unifying message out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And so it is like, it's been really neat to see, how like opportunities have like doors have opened and we've been able to, engage with those groups out there that think very differently of one another. But like, again, like it doesn't change our mission at Brave
Mm.
Love, in which we're just focused on like adoption, changing the perception of adoption and educating people on what it like looks like today. And
Mm.
like the big way in which we do that is like speaking honorably about birth parents and birth
Yeah.
moms.
Yeah.
Does that answer your
Yeah.
question?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's wonderful because when you're talking about that, it basically means like the message of adoption and the honoring of birth moms is not connected to any political ideology, any religion or faith stance or
Yeah.
anything. It is that this is an option for moms, and that adoption should be available as an option for moms in crisis, and they shouldn't be judged for it or shamed
Exactly.
for it. That it's actually a very, as your guy's name says, it's a very brave choice to choose that, because it's not like all of the options, that no option is easy when you talk about pregnancy.
Right.
Like if you choose to end a pregnancy, there will be effects that you're going to have to deal with. If you choose adoption, there are things that you're going to have to deal with. If you choose to parent that child, there are things that you're going to have to deal with. So when we talk about pregnancy is life-changing. No matter what. And you guys want to help moms know that adoption is an option, and that it's not a option to be looked down upon. And you're helping the rest of the world honor that option, which I love. So
yes.
Yeah.
Well said.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, we already told everyone where they can come and find you and follow.
Yay.
So last question, because as we said earlier, we think mentorship and discipleship is so important. We don't encourage people to walk this world alone. So who is it that has helped you along in your journey?
Oh, I love that. I have a dear college friend And she, yeah, that's who I think of, Haley. And she's just been there. She's been there. We've known each other for 20 years. So there's history there.
Yeah.
But she's just been there even when we haven't been living in the same place, and I think she's like consistent and shows up, and like, she's just so good about like just intentionally like pursuing our friendship. And we've actually had like some similar like life experiences and even work experiences. So we both work in the nonprofit world, and so she, that's who I think of. Like, it's really helped me and just been a friend, and just and along, especially these last 20 years.
I love it. Those long-term friendships. I'm not 20 years old. I am older than that. Well, I mean, and the funny thing is, I sometimes look and I'm like, I've been best friends with my friend for 25 years. I'm not even that old. How can I?
Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I am. But still, 25 years, those friends that stick with us through thick and thin, and and our joke is like, I've stuck with you for 25 years. There's really not much that could.
I'm not going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Moving, changes, whatever. I'm here to stay. So
yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm so glad that you have Haley and you have that relationship, and that you guys bless one another. So I want to say thank you, Laura, for everything that you have shared with us today. I think this is really going to be beneficial, whether, someone is, and hey, listeners, maybe this isn't you. Maybe this isn't your story, but I love, Laura, what you said about being prepared, because you never know who's going to come into your life. You never know. You may even have just a conversation with somebody at the grocery store, and it leads to them mentioning that they adopted, they placed a child for adoption. And now, maybe some questions to ask or how to serve them in that moment. And I think this is an important conversation to have. So thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. I've loved it. You're so easy to talk to,
Thank you.
It's a good thing you're a podcaster.
Right. My brothers are like, "Oh, this is why you talked so much as a child. You were just training for this." I love it. That's right.
No, I thank you. I just want to say, thank you for having us. But I think it's just so significant and so meaningful. For even for you to want to talk about this, and so I'm grateful for your help in getting the word out about Brave Love, but just more importantly, talking about adoption and from the point of view of birth moms and whatnot. Yeah. So thank you.
Absolutely. So go, listeners, go check out bravelove.org. Correct? Bravelove.org.
Bravelove.org. You got it.
Awesome. And see what they're up to. Thank you, Laura, for joining me.
Thank you.
Well, I hope this helped you to have words that you can use when speaking to a birth mom. We all know the sacrifice they have made to give life to their babies, and I love that now we know how to honor that sacrifice and their brave choice. If you love this conversation, would you take a screenshot of the episode, tag us, and share it with your friends? Laura had so many good things to say, and the ministry that Brave Love is doing is worth sharing. So remember, you know people that I don't know that need to hear this episode and many of our other episodes. So share this episode so they don't miss out. You can find all the link to Brave Love's website over in the show notes on our website at journeyofruth.com. And don't forget to check the show notes on your device and on the website for the phone number to call in and answer so you can be on our 150th podcast episode. While you're at the website, take our discipleship survey to help with my upcoming book, and check out the speaker page if you'd like to have me come and speak to your group or Bible study. Send me a message and let's chat about your event and how I can serve your group. Finally, head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and review the show, and subscribe over on YouTube. These reviews allow people that don't know you or I to find the podcast and enjoy it for themselves. I'll see you in 2 weeks right here on the Journey of Ruth Discipleship Podcast.